On a rain-swept night in Lagos, Black billionaire Chief Michael Okoro slips on dark glasses and an even darker decision to pretend to be blind and test the vow his young, beautiful black wife once made. Even if you go blind, I'll never leave you. The mansion becomes a stage. Devotion becomes performance. Whispers turn to thunder. Perfume that isn't his. Laughter at the gates. A kiss in the shadows. Michael arms the walls with hidden eyes. Property papers. Midnight secrets. A trap quietly set. And on the night when candles flicker over silk and betrayal, he steps into the bedroom, removes the glasses, and says the words that end a marriage. I see everything.
The rain poured down over Lagos that evening, the kind of tropical storm that seemed to wash the city in both beauty and menace. Inside the towering Okoro mansion on Banana Island, everything gleamed with wealth: marble floors, gold-trimmed curtains, antique paintings. Yet, in his private study, Chief Michael Okoro, one of Nigeria's most powerful billionaires, sat hunched in front of the fireplace, untouched wine glass trembling in his hand. This was the man who had built empires in oil, real estate, and technology, a man who could summon presidents with a phone call, who had been hailed in Forbes as the African visionary. But tonight, with firelight flickering across his tired face, he looked less like a titan and more like a man haunted by a single question: does she truly love me? She, Diana, his stunning young wife, 30 years his junior. When he married her, whispers filled every social circle in Lagos. She's just after his money. She'll wait for his will. But Diana had been convincing. Her gentle touch, her tears of devotion, her dramatic declarations of love, Michael had let himself believe. He remembered one night vividly, his 50th birthday party, the ballroom glittering with politicians, celebrities, and business moguls. The moment came when Diana raised her glass and proclaimed, "Even if you go blind tomorrow, I'll never leave you. I will never look at another man. I will love you until the end." The crowd applauded. His heart swelled, but deep inside, suspicion lingered like a shadow. Had those words been rehearsed? Had she simply known what everyone wanted to hear? Now, years later, the memory echoed in his mind like a haunting refrain. Tonight, staring into the flames, Michael made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, he summoned his trusted physician, Dr. Emmanuel Pierce. The doctor entered with concern, only to be met with an unusual request. "Chief," Dr. Pierce said carefully, "you want me to tell your wife you are permanently blind, that you've suffered irreversible optic nerve damage?" "Yes," Michael replied firmly, his voice steady. "I want to test her loyalty. I want to see if she loves me or only the man I used to be." The doctor hesitated, then sighed. "Chief, this is dangerous. Emotionally, psychologically, what if you regret what you discover?" Michael's gaze hardened. "Then at least I will finally know the truth." 2 days later, Diana returned from a luxury spa retreat. She entered the mansion, radiant in her designer dress, shopping bags in hand. "Honey, I bought that Italian perfume you like," she called out cheerfully. But her smile faltered when she saw her husband seated on the living room couch, dark glasses on, a walking stick resting at his side. Michael, what's going on?" she asked, rushing toward him. He didn't look up. "I went to the hospital. Something went wrong with my eyes. The doctor said, it's permanent. I can't see." For several seconds, silence hung heavy in the air. Diana stared at him, her face frozen. Then, with a voice as smooth as honey, she whispered, "Then I'll be your eyes, my love. I made a vow, remember?" Michael smiled faintly, but the warmth never reached his heart. For the first time in his life, the billionaire who once commanded the world was now pretending to live in darkness, not to fool others, but to uncover the light or shadows hidden inside his wife's soul.
The following morning, Lagos woke to a sky the color of pewter. The lagoon was a dull mirror. Banana Island's palm fronds moved in a slow, steady breath. Inside the Okoro mansion, silence felt new, like a guest everyone was afraid to greet. Chief Michael Okoro rose before dawn. He showered in the dark. He dressed without a light. In the mirror, he could see his own eyes looking back, alert and steady. Yet when he slid on the dark glasses, they vanished behind glassy night. He picked up the white cane the security team had procured and tapped it once on the marble. The sound rang up into the high ceilings and came back small. He took it as a sign. His world, at least for now, had to be smaller. He called Dr. Emmanuel Pierce to arrange the first performance of Truth. The doctor arrived mid-morning in a navy suit, his stethoscope in a slim leather case. He had the careful face of a man who knew that words could slice. "Chief," he said in a low voice, "I will deliver the diagnosis exactly as rehearsed. But remember, your staff will be shaken. Some may not hide their fear." "I understand," Michael said. "Let them be afraid. I am afraid too. But the fear has to live here, not in the dark corners of my marriage." They chose the living room for the announcement. Grand, ceremonial, inevitable. Michael sat in the cream sofa that faced the garden, the faint scent of egusi and lemon oil lingering from the night before. He heard the housekeeper, Auntie Bisi, directing the younger staff in Yoruba, moving lightly as if her feet were always apologizing for making sound. Somewhere a blender pulsed and stopped. The mansion had its own heartbeat. Diana came in laughing, one of those bright social laughs she kept for other people, then stopped when she saw Dr. Pierce standing beside her husband. She wore a silk blouse the color of hibiscus and a pencil skirt that cut the air when she moved. The gold at her wrists seemed to warm the room. "What's wrong?" she asked, eyes flicking between the men. "Emmanuel, are you here for a checkup? Michael didn't tell me." "I'm here with difficult news," Dr. Pierce said, tone professional but soft. "There has been a rapid and severe degeneration of the optic nerve. Our scans indicate permanent damage. I'm sorry." The sentence fell like a stone into a still lake. Diana's lips parted. For a long second, nothing came out. "Permanent?" she repeated, as if trying the word in her mouth to see if it tasted different for her. "Are you certain?" "We ran multiple tests. Chief has been advised to prepare for a new way of living. There is no surgical fix available. We will focus on adaptation, safe navigation at home, tactile training, audio technology." Michael sat very still. He had practiced this, and still it bruised. In the quiet that followed, a chair scraped in the hallway. Auntie Bisi's breath caught. Diana moved fast then, as if speed could make her the kind of woman life always rewards. She took Michael's hand with both of hers and pressed her cheek to his fingers. "You have me," she whispered. "I'll be your eyes. We'll make this work. Do you hear me? We will make this work." Her voice was velvet, but he listened for the thread beneath the velvet, the one that would snag later, perhaps.
Dr. Pierce began the training. He showed Michael how to map the room with the cane, how to listen for hard surfaces and soft fabrics, how to measure steps with his feet. He described the app that would read printed pages aloud. He explained the talking watch, the tactile dots the staff would place on light switches and door frames. The house would learn a new language, and so would his master. "Chief," the doctor said, "there will be stages of adjustment. Fatigue, frustration. You may feel trapped. Allow the feelings to pass through you. They are part of the learning. Lean on your people." "On the right people," Michael said. He felt the room as a blind man must. The air cool on the back of his neck, the vent, the smell of polish near the entryway, the console table, the whisper of silk, the sound of Diana shifting her weight, the distant hum of the generator like a cat asleep in the walls. He memorized it, each sound a nail to hang a truth upon later. By lunchtime, word had filtered through the mansion without a single shout. Lagos has always known how to carry news without scraping the floor. The chef made jollof rice with grilled fish, its pepper bloom warming the house. Diana served him herself. She cut the fish into pieces and lifted each bite to his lips. He opened his mouth, chewed slowly, nodded his thanks. She dabbed the corner of his mouth with a cloth napkin, as if she were polishing a memory that might tarnish. He wished he could say he felt comfort. What he felt was a performance, and he could not yet tell whether he was the audience or the prop. After the meal, she guided him through the hallways with practiced sweetness. "2 steps here, love. There's a rug edge, careful. This way, yes, that's it." Her hand was warm at his elbow. Once, when the cane kissed a chair leg, she laughed lightly and said, "You'll be an expert in no time." He smiled. His smile was a small boat on a churning sea. In the afternoon, Dr. Pierce returned to demonstrate the audio assistant that would read messages. "This is a simple interface. Headphones will help. You can dictate emails. You can call me anytime." He set a follow-up appointment. He took Michael's pulse. It was steady. He looked into the hidden eyes as if he might see through the glass and into a storm. Then he left. The sun loosened its hold on the city. The lagoon became a sheet of old silver. The house breathed again, and the staff moved on slippers of care. He asked to walk alone in the garden. Diana protested, "Let me come, please, let me come." He shook his head. 5 minutes. I need to hear the birds learning my name." A guard shadowed him from a distance. He tapped the cane along the stone path, listened for the small echo at the fountain, the rush of water that never learned to be quiet. Hibiscus brushed his trouser leg. Its petals felt like folded tissue. Geckos clicked in the wall. He made a map in his mind and folded it twice. He thought of the vow, "Even if you go blind, I'll never leave you." He had clung to that sentence like a man dangling from a helicopter rope, the sea raging below. Today, he put both feet on the deck and faced the wind. He found, to his surprise, that he could stand. When he returned inside, Diana had arranged the living room as if it were a small, kind hospital. A blanket lay over the back of his chair, a tray with tea, a stack of audiobooks queued on a tablet with a large tactile cover. She moved with the quickness of a woman whose image has always eaten before her heart. "I called a rehabilitation specialist," she said brightly. "And I spoke to the driver about installing a step guide by the car door. Also, I've told the staff that all furniture stays exactly where it is. Consistency is key." He nodded. "Thank you." "Of course," she said. "I'm your wife." Evening fell in slow inches. The chandelier dimmed to a warm gold. The city's traffic hummed like distant bees. Michael took dinner in the study with the door open, the aroma of pepper soup curling in like a promise. Diana ate a few bites, then set down her spoon. "I'm going to run a bath for you. Warm, lavender, it will help you sleep." Sleep. He had slept like a king in his own body all his life. Now he knew he would have to sleep like a guard, eyes closed, ears open. He thanked her and listened to the water begin to sing in the tub. In the bath, with foam licking his chest, he let his mind travel through rooms he would not see tonight. The guest room with the soft gray throw, the kitchen where the knives lived in perfect rows, the garage where the Bentley sat like a quiet animal waiting to be fed. He had built every inch of this home. He had measured with architects, argued with contractors, added touches he alone noticed. He had loved the work because it made a world he could trust. Now, he would have to trust something else entirely. Something that breathed and lied and kissed him goodnight. When he emerged, Diana was in a satin robe at the vanity, a cloud of floral perfume around her. She came to him slowly, hands light at his shoulders. She guided him to bed. She tucked the sheet. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "We are fine," she said.
The first week passed like a play Diana had rehearsed for years. She seemed determined to convince the entire household, and perhaps herself, that she was the very definition of loyalty. Every morning she would rise earlier than the staff, slipping into the kitchen to direct the day's menu. The chef, bewildered, obeyed her sudden enthusiasm. For breakfast, she prepared akara fritters and pap, insisting on serving them with her own hands. At lunch, it was spicy jollof rice with grilled tilapia. In the evening, she brought trays of agouti soup with pounded yam, the aroma drifting through the mansion like a warm memory of home. She would settle on the sofa beside Michael, scoop the food into a spoon and hold it gently to his lips. "Open," she would coo, her voice wrapped in sweetness. He obeyed, chewing slowly, listening not to her words, but to the rhythm underneath them. The texture of her voice was too smooth, the way silk sometimes hides a tear. At night she massaged his shoulders, whispering, "You are still the most handsome man in Lagos." Her laughter tinkled like glass when he stumbled with his cane, and she would rush forward to steady him. To the staff, it looked like devotion. To neighbors who occasionally visited, it was proof that the vow she once made was true. But Michael's ears, sharper now in darkness, began catching the dissonance. Her hand on his arm was steady, but her breath sometimes quickened, like someone carrying a weight not visible to the eye. Her compliments were polished, repeated phrases without the tremor of real affection. And when she kissed his forehead goodnight, her lips lingered only long enough to fulfill a duty, not a desire. The staff murmured among themselves in the servants' quarters. "Madam has changed," whispered Auntie Bisi, the housekeeper. "She acts loving, but her eyes, they look past Chief as if searching for something else." The younger steward nodded, but none dared speak within Diana's earshot. One Sunday afternoon, Diana suggested they host a small prayer service in the mansion. "To bless your health," she said brightly. She invited a pastor, some society friends, and arranged the living room with candles. During the prayer, she wept openly, clutching Michael's hand, telling the guests how she would never abandon her husband. "Even if he cannot see, I will be his vision," she declared. Applause filled the room. Cameras from their friends' phones captured the image of the beautiful, faithful wife. But that night, when the last candle was blown out and the mansion had returned to silence, Michael lay awake and listened. The rhythm of Diana's breathing was not calm, it carried a restless edge. She turned in the bed, unlocked her phone, and typed with quick, secretive taps. He kept his own eyes closed beneath the dark glasses, and his heart whispered, "This is only the beginning." The first cracks in Diana's performance appeared like hairline fractures in marble, barely visible, but once seen, impossible to ignore. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Michael sat in the veranda, cane resting against his knee, pretending to nap. The rain had ended, leaving the garden fresh with the smell of wet hibiscus. Through the open glass doors, he heard Diana's voice, low and eager, rising from the hallway. "No, don't worry," she whispered into her phone, her tone light, playful. "He can't see a thing. I swear it's like living with a statue." A pause, then laughter. Laughter that cut through him sharper than any blade. Michael's fingers tightened around the cane. His face remained still, but inside his chest burned. That evening, when Diana returned to serve him soup, her voice was sweet again. "Open your mouth, love. I made this just for you." He obeyed, watching him through the tint of his glasses. Her eyes did not meet his. There was no warmth, no spark, just irritation hidden behind a smile. The signs multiplied. She began wearing new perfumes, bold and musky, scents that clung to her clothes long after she had passed. One night he complimented the fragrance. Instead of blushing with pride, she smirked. "Just something I picked up. You wouldn't know it anyway." Her clothing changed too. Brighter colors, tighter skirts, heels clicking through the hallways at night. She no longer dressed for him. She dressed for an unseen audience. Sometimes Michael would sit quietly in the study, the door slightly open. Through the iron gates at the edge of the property, he heard soft knocks, then footsteps. A man's voice murmured, "Babe, I missed you." And Diana's reply, quick and nervous, "Shh, keep your voice down, he's inside," followed by the unmistakable sound of a kiss. Michael stood in the shadows that night, heart hammering. Through the blinds, he saw her in another man's arms, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black shirt. They kissed openly, as if the mansion belonged to them. She let him in. Michael returned to bed before she did, lying still, the mask of blindness covering his grief. Half an hour later, Diana tiptoed back into the room, sliding under the covers. The scent of the man's cologne still clung to her skin. Other nights, she grew careless. She took long showers, humming unfamiliar tunes. Sometimes she forgot to bring him dinner at all, and when he asked, her voice snapped, "Can't you see I'm busy? Do you think you're the only person in this house?" But the sharpest blade came one afternoon in the kitchen. Michael sat near the window, fingers brushing the raised dots of a Braille book, when Diana's voice floated in from behind the pantry door. She was speaking to Auntie Bessie, the loyal housekeeper. "Honestly, I don't know how much longer I can keep this up." "Madam," Bessie whispered nervously, "but what if Olga gets better?" "He won't," Diana said coldly. "He's useless now. I didn't marry a blind man, I married a billionaire. If all he can offer me is silence and blindness, then I'll get what I need elsewhere." The words stabbed deeper than any betrayal in business, deeper than any enemy's lie. That night, as Diana kissed his forehead before bed, Michael forced himself to whisper, "Do you think love can survive anything?" She smiled thinly. "Yes, of course. Real love can." He turned away and murmured into the dark, "Then why does mine feel like it's dying?" The perfect wife had vanished. What stood before him now was a stranger, one who no longer pretended to care, one who saw him not as a husband, but as a burden. And Michael, though he wore the mask of blindness, was seeing more clearly than ever. If the first signs of betrayal were whispers, the next ones were thunder. What Diana once tried to conceal with sweet gestures now spilled into the open, reckless and unashamed. The night of the perfume. One evening, Michael sat quietly in the study, the curtains drawn, his cane resting across his knees. Diana thought he was asleep upstairs. Through the open veranda, he heard the faint creak of the front gate, followed by hushed laughter. "Babe, I missed you," a man's voice said. Michael's chest tightened. He didn't move. "Shh," Diana whispered. "He's inside. Don't worry, he won't hear us. He sleeps like a log." They both giggled. Then Michael heard it, the sound of lips meeting, a kiss deep and careless, right there in front of the mansion he had built brick by brick. Diana led the man inside. Michael's hands trembled on his cane, but he remained in the shadows. He told himself, "Not yet. I need more." The smell of another man. That night, Diana tiptoed into their bedroom long after midnight. She slipped under the covers, her skin still damp from a hurried shower. But her perfume betrayed her. Bold musk, laced with something foreign, something masculine. Michael closed his eyes, his breath steady, but inside he wanted to scream. He wanted to rip the sheets apart, to drag her into the cold rain outside. But instead, he whispered only to himself, "Patience. The truth needs witnesses." The garden affair. Days later, the wound deepened. Michael sat near the window, pretending to read Braille when he heard laughter echoing from the staff quarters at the back of the house. He rose quietly and moved closer, every step a silent storm. Through the open shutters, he saw them, Diana and Jonas Obi, the 22-year-old assistant he had hired out of pity, the boy whose mother's surgery Michael himself had paid for. They were playfully splashing water from a bucket, laughter turning into flirtation, flirtation melting into a kiss. Michael's knees weakened. He gripped the wall for support. Betrayal was bitter enough with strangers, but with a boy he had treated like family? His vision blurred with rage he could not yet release. That evening at dinner, Diana smiled across the table, feeding him spoonfuls of stew. "Do you see? I still take care of you," she said sweetly. Michael looked at her for a long moment through his dark glasses. "Diana," he asked softly, "do you think love can survive anything?" She tilted her head, smiled that rehearsed smile. Yes, of course, even blindness. But in her eyes, he saw only emptiness. The mask slips. Her patience with him wore thinner by the day. She forgot meals, she snapped when he asked simple questions. She turned the television to loud music videos, dancing seductively in the living room, as if to remind herself she was still young, still wanted. And she no longer bothered to hide her disdain. One afternoon, he overheard her mocking him to a friend on the phone. "Sometimes I wave my hand in front of his face and he doesn't flinch. It's hilarious. He's blind, useless, nothing but a statue." His jaw tightened, but his expression remained calm. Only the cane in his hand betrayed his fury, the wood creaking under his grip. The husband's silent decision. That night, alone in the darkness of their bedroom, Michael whispered to himself, "Love is not what people say when the sun shines. It's what they do when the night falls. And now I see her clearer than ever." The man who once conquered empires now faced the greatest battlefield of his life, not in boardrooms, not in politics, but in his own home. And the enemy was not a stranger, but the woman who had once promised to love him until the end.
The affairs alone might have destroyed another man, but for Michael, betrayal reached its sharpest edge not in the bedroom, but in the study, where signatures could erase empires. The subtle suggestion. It began innocently enough. One late afternoon, Diana entered the private lounge with a tray of hibiscus tea, her perfume clouding the air. She set the tray down, adjusted his glasses for him, then lingered with a careful smile. "You've been under so much stress, my love," she said gently, stroking his hand. Managing the properties, the accounts, the staff, it must feel overwhelming now. Michael tilted his head, listening. "And what do you suggest?" Her fingers tightened ever so slightly. "I'll take some of the burden, just temporarily. You can focus on resting, on healing. I'll manage the Victoria Island apartments and maybe the Banana Island villa. Nothing permanent, just relief for you." The trap is set. Michael leaned back, silent. Inside, fury coiled like a serpent, but his face revealed nothing. "You bring me the documents," he said softly. Her eyes brightened with triumph she tried to hide. The next day she returned with 2 folders. "Just routine transfers of management rights," she said sweetly. "Sign here, darling. Trust me." He opened the folders, fingers brushing over the signature lines. He smiled faintly and signed, knowing full well these were dummy documents, carefully crafted by Barrister Samuel Grant. They meant nothing legally, but to Diana they were bait. She kissed his cheek afterward, her lipstick leaving a crimson mark. "You won't regret this," she whispered. But Michael already did. The secret call. That evening from his study, he heard her voice floating from the dining room. Excitement sharpened her words. "Yes, he signed," she said into the phone, giggling. "Imagine, this fool doesn't even know he just gave me access to 2 properties worth over £1 billion. Once we finish the papers, we move. We sell the house, disappear, and start fresh. No more secrets." Michael's hands trembled, not from fear of losing wealth. Money was only numbers. No, what broke him was the confirmation that the woman he once trusted with his soul was plotting not just betrayal of love, but theft of legacy. The lawyer's counsel. The next morning he called Barrister Grant on a secured line. His voice was low, shaking with restrained anger. "It's worse than I feared," Michael said. "She's not only unfaithful, she's preparing to strip everything I built. She thinks I'm helpless. It's time." "Chief," the lawyer replied carefully, "are you ready to go public?" "Not yet," Michael said coldly. "I need evidence, unshakable proof. Then we set the trap." The billionaire's reflection. That night, Michael stood before his bedroom mirror. He removed his dark glasses and stared into his own eyes, eyes that had seen too much, yet had to pretend to see nothing. "This is the woman I married, but not anymore. The trap is set, and the day of reckoning is near."
Betrayal in marriage can be hidden with words, but betrayal of wealth requires proof. And Chief Michael Okoro was a man who built his empire on evidence, not rumor. If Diana believed she was playing chess, she had forgotten she was up against a grand master. The plan with Barrister Grant. In the dim light of his study, Michael dialed Barrister Samuel Grant once more. The lawyer's voice came calm, steady, a lifeline in the storm. "She thinks I'm blind, Sam. She believes she can parade her lovers under my roof, forge my signature, sell my home. But she doesn't know. My eyes see clearer in the dark than ever before." Grant exhaled. "Then let's trap her. Cameras, microphones, secure servers. But Chief, once we start, there is no going back." Michael's jaw tightened. "I don't want a way back. I want the truth preserved. I want the world to see her as I see her." The cameras in the shadows. Within days, a discreet team entered the mansion under the guise of electricians. They worked swiftly, silently. Pinhole cameras hidden in curtain rods, audio devices tucked inside flower vases. Even Michael's white cane now carried a tiny lens, its feed streaming to a private server accessible only to him and his lawyer. The mansion itself became a witness. Michael tested the system alone one evening. Sitting in his study, he slipped on headphones and tapped a small control. On the screen before him bloomed images. Diana laughing with a stranger in the living room. Jonas Obi slipping an arm around her waist in the kitchen. Whispers exchanged in the guest room when she thought Michael was asleep. He pressed pause, his hand trembling. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. The footage of betrayal. One night, he watched a recording where Diana sat on the couch with a bald, gold-toothed man. They drank his wine, feet propped on his table. "So he just sits around all day?" the man sneered. "Blind as a bat," Diana replied, crossing her legs. "It's hilarious." They both laughed. Michael clenched his fist, veins standing out like rivers. Another recording showed Jonas entering the guest room after midnight. Diana followed, her laughter low, nervous. The bed creaked. He had to look away, his breath ragged. This was not a stranger. This was the boy he had clothed, educated, trusted like a son. The husband's interrogation. Days later, Michael sat in the garden, came by his side, while Jonas brought him a tray of juice. "Thank you, Jonas," Michael said. He waited a beat, then asked softly, "Tell me, what does loyalty mean to you?" The boy stiffened, forcing a smile. "Loyalty, sir. It's doing what you're told, respecting who you serve." Michael nodded, though inside his heart boiled. If only you knew that your lies are already recorded in high-definition clarity. The net tightens. That evening, Diana returned with new documents, urging him to sign. Michael played along, scribbling his name with calm hands while fury screamed inside him. Later, alone, he watched her gloat on the phone. "Yes, baby, it's done. Once we finalize, we'll sell the house, disappear with the money. Chief will never know." Michael's eyes burned with silent fire. He turned to the camera in his cane, staring into its tiny lens as if into the eyes of the world. Soon, the truth will speak louder than her lies. The man in the mirror. That night he removed his glasses again and looked at himself in the mirror. For weeks he had lived as a blind man, but the reflection that stared back was sharp, unbroken, unafraid. "She thinks I am powerless," he murmured, "but I am watching, always watching." The cameras whirred silently in the walls, capturing every deceit, every stolen kiss, every whispered plot. And in the heart of the mansion, Chief Michael Okoro waited, patient, silent, a king, preparing for Judgment Day.
The night came when patience had collected enough scars, and silence could no longer bear the weight of truth. The setup. Diana thought she was untouchable. Weeks of deceit had dulled her caution, emboldened her arrogance. That Friday evening she dressed in a scarlet silk robe, her hair curled, her perfume heavy with promise. She welcomed Kelvin, a flashy young man in gold chains, into the mansion as if it were a hotel. Michael sat quietly in the corner of the living room, Kane resting by his side, head bowed as though lost in thought. Through his tinted glasses, he saw everything. "Is this him?" Kelvin chuckled, glancing at Michael. "Doesn't look like much." "Keep your voice down," Diana hissed. "He's harmless now, just sits there like a statue." They laughed. In front of him, in his own house. The final insult. Later that night, Diana led Kelvin into the master bedroom, the very bed where she once made vows of eternal love. Soft music played, candles flickered, wine glasses clinked. "Shh," she whispered, climbing onto Kelvin's lap. "Don't worry, he's fast asleep. I've been doing this for months. He never notices. He's nothing now." Michael heard every word. His heart, though bruised, beat steady. The trap had closed. The moment of revelation. The door creaked open. Michael stepped inside, his cane tapping against the marble. Diana froze mid-laugh, nearly dropping her glass. Kelvin tensed, ready to bolt. "Relax," she whispered urgently. "He's just feeling his way around. Stay quiet, don't say a word. He won't see us." The room was silent, except for the low hum of the music. Michael stood still at the foot of the bed. Slowly, deliberately, he reached up, removed his dark glasses, and revealed eyes not blind, but blazing. "Diana," his voice low, trembling with controlled rage, "I see everything." The color drained from her face. "Wait, you're not blind?" she stuttered, her knees buckling as she fell to the floor. Kelvin stumbled backward, grabbing his shoes. I should go." "Get out of my house," Michael thundered, his voice shaking the walls. Kelvin fled without another word. Diana crawled forward, tears streaking her mascara. She clutched at Michael's legs. "Please, Michael, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I was scared, confused. Please don't throw me out." Michael's cane slammed against the floor. His voice was steady, cold as steel. "You brought strangers into my bed. You mocked me when you thought I couldn't hear. You plotted to sell my legacy. You failed the test of loyalty. And now you are nothing to me." The judgment. The door opened. 2 security guards entered, their faces grim. Michael pointed at her. "Take this woman out. Let her carry only what she brought into this house, her lies, her greed, and her shame." They seized her by the arms. Diana screamed, her voice cracking. "You can't do this! I'm your wife!" "You were, but not anymore." The fall of Diana Okoro. The guards dragged her out into the Lagos night. Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavy, drenching her silk robe until it clung like a shroud. Her makeup ran down her cheeks, mixing with tears. At the top of the marble staircase, Michael stood tall, like a king who had seen through every mask. "Get out of my house, Diana," he declared, his voice echoing through the estate. "You lost your place here the moment you believed my blindness made me weak." Her cries faded as the gates slammed shut behind her. And within the mansion, every staff member stood silent, each one knowing the truth now. Their master had never been blind, and their mistress had never been loyal.
The rain had washed the night clean, but inside the Okoro mansion, the air was heavier than ever. Diana's screams had faded beyond the gates, yet their echo clung to the marble walls like smoke after a fire. The morning after. By dawn, the story was no longer private. Word spread faster than any whisper. Footage from the hidden cameras, Diana with Jonas, with Kelvin, with men who had no place in that home, was leaked to major outlets. BBC Africa ran the headline, "Billionaire Chief Exposes Wife's Betrayal." CNN International called it the blindness that wasn't. Social media exploded. Hashtag Eyes of Truth trended across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. In salons and offices across Lagos, people murmured, "How could she? That man is sharp, wise like a lion. She mocked him in his own house." Diana became a symbol, not of beauty or status, but of disgrace. The wife's exile. She tried to return once, barefoot, her once glowing skin pale, her eyes hollow. "Please," she begged, "just let me speak to him." But Michael refused. From his study window, he told them, "Tell her I see her now more clearly than ever, and I am not blind anymore to her lies, her greed, or her regret." The gates closed. Diana walked away, swallowed by the city she once ruled with charm. The billionaire's silence. Inside the mansion, there was no celebration, no laughter, only silence thick with memory. Michael sat by the fireplace, journal in hand, writing words that cut deeper than the night's betrayal. "She failed, not because I pretended to be blind, but because she had no eyes for love. She saw only wealth, power and opportunity. But I have eyes now, not just to see faces, but to see souls. The staff tiptoed around him, unsure whether to pity or admire him. He no longer wore his glasses. His walk was steady, his shoulders squared, but his laughter came rarely, reserved and fragile. The foundation of truth. Weeks later, Michael called a press conference. Cameras flashed, reporters crowded. He announced the creation of the Eyes of Truth Foundation, a charity in his late mother's name. "I built this from pain. It will serve those abandoned by the ones they trusted most, the elderly, the forgotten, the betrayed. Because loyalty is not what people say when the sun is shining, it's what they do when the world goes dark." The announcement was met with applause, not only in Nigeria but across the globe. Donations poured in, volunteers tripled. Survivors of betrayal found a voice in his story. The man who saw clearly. One Sunday morning, Michael walked through his garden. The sun broke through the clouds, the hibiscus blooming red against the green. This was the same garden where Diana once held his hand and promised, "Even if you go blind, I will never leave you." He smiled bitterly at the memory. "Words are cheap," he murmured. "Truth is expensive." The fountain gurgled softly, the birds sang, the staff watched him with quiet respect. He paused, turned to them, and said, "I pretended to be blind, but in that blindness I saw the truth. And now I no longer fear the dark, because I know who truly stands with me." They applauded gently, some in tears. Final reflection. That evening, alone by the fire, Michael whispered to the empty room, "I would have loved you forever, Diana, even in real blindness. But you never truly saw me." A single tear fell, not for her, but for the man he had once been, the man who believed words could outlast storms. Now he had lost a wife, but gained something greater: clarity. In a world filled with noise, he had finally learned to listen, not with ears, not with eyes, but with the soul. Moral of the story. True love is tested not in sunshine, but in storms. Loyalty is silent when spoken, but loud when proven. Sometimes we must step into darkness to finally see the truth.